The 50th GST Council meeting is underway. The meeting will deliberate on a host of issues, including claims on input tax credit, taxation of online gaming. Among other things, Council is also likely to clarify on GST rates applicable on food and beverages sold in multiplexes. It will also finalize contours for setting up appellate tribunal and the demand of the industry to reimburse full CGST and 50% of IGST in the 11 hill states under the scheme for budgetary support. We are, of course, discussing the meeting, the big GST meeting, 50th GST meeting that is currently underway. Joining us at this point in time is Syed Peeran, who is the partner at Lakshmikumaran, and Sridharan. Srinath is also with us, who is an independent markets commentator. Gentlemen, appreciate you both taking time out. I want to begin by asking you, Srinath, we are, of course, discussing what is likely to come out. Quickly run us through what the big expectations will be from this meeting.
So I think the big expectation obviously is the bringing GST under PMLA. I think it's a politically sensitive conversation. While there have been clarification given that it is only about information sharing, how will it pan out with investigative powers? That's going to be a big one. Two, I think we're also going to see potential conversation around reconstitution of the ministerial panel that has to decide on the rates, the GST rates. That's two. The third, which is the contiguous one, is going to be some of the states have been arguing for continued compensation to be given to them, considering that they've been getting lower than promised revenues. So how is it going to pan out? We will know soon. The industry, I think, is also going to watch out what's going to happen to the entire concept of GST rates on online gaming. I think this has been in the conversation quite for some time. While the group of ministers have given an indication that 28% GST would be a good rate, I think the jury is still out, especially being a politically sensitive conversation about gaming. I don't know. For all the flawed conversations around morality, I don't know, this could play out very, very differently. I think these are the critical ones.
Okay. On gaming specifically, Syed, we are given to understand that the government is, of course, trying to bring online gaming into GST. It's going to be a regulatory hurdle for the government, not just something that they are going to internally disagree or agree upon. It's also going to be about trying to get all these players to agree, the stakeholders to agree. Tough ask.
Yeah, definitely, it's a tough ask. But I think the gaming industry has been looking at this from some time now. There have been certain litigations also on that front, whether the activity of online gaming itself would be subject to GST itself or not. Of course, now they are trying to bring some clarity by way of specific amendments, I suppose, in the Act, by which they will seek to clarify that online gaming with or without stakes should be subject to GST. I think the two issues which will be surrounding this aspect would be the increase of rate of tax, or rather, right now, I think the gaming industry is paying taxes on 18% on the platform fee which they are earning. So the conversation will be around whether the rate of tax should be 28% on the gaming, online gaming, and on what value, whether it should be on 28% on the platform fee or the gross gaming revenue, that's a GGR, whether it should be only on that or should be restricted to that, or should be on the entire face value, or as in the entire stakes. So whatever is the contribution made to the prize pool, whether it should be on that value. So these are the two conversations which are going to be happening, whether the tax rate should be maximum 28% in line with gambling, or whether it should be restricted to 18%. I think there should be some consensus there, where there may be some sort of a consensus to bring it under 28%, but more interesting conversation would be on what value they should charge GST. I think the sector would be more keen to see which direction the government goes, and I think they would be happy if that is restricted to GGR rather than moving on to the entire stakes which are being collected from the players.
An important, interesting point would also be to differentiate between, games of skill versus games of chance, and that is, of course, where more clarity is also needed. Rakesh, very interesting point to begin with. GST under PMLA. What does it mean for people who are trying to evade taxation authorities by generating fake GST bills? Because that's a problem that the last GST Council also deliberated and discussed, and there has been an attempt, of course, made by the government to ensure that crack down on fake GST bills.
Well, interesting point. Again, it will polarize hugely, and I don't think we'll have a decision at the end of the meeting. At least this particular meeting, I wish it comes through. But the idea is to go whole hog after those who are defaulting on any count. And when you bring such a stringent law under the GST ambit, I do believe that it will act as a deterrent. That's one of the points under discussion today. But the larger point, is gaming. I think as far as the agenda for today's meeting is concerned, gaming again would weigh heavily on the moral principle rather than the skill principle, as Sridharan,
Right.
pointed out. So I think it'll go to the higher kitty or the higher bucket in this case rather than the lower bucket. The big ticket reform in GST, that's what we should look at. This is just a small change, if I can use that phrase, is the tax rationalization structure, which I think is unlikely to happen even if we have the next meeting coming maybe in 3 months before elections. So there is huge demand at the macro and the micro level, Shweta, on reforming GST, both from revenues accruing to the states as also in terms of the consumer paying for GST at the tariff level. It was supposed to be Mr. Modi, when it was announced and brought through a massive consensus by the then Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, as good and simple tax. It has come through, but it's still not good and simple tax. I guess the government should realize that. Not only the centre government, but the states who are equally represented in the GST Council. It's chaired by the Finance Minister, but it has a very strong representation of the states. So once we are beyond the political, as I call the political Rubicon, we must address these issues and truly make GST as a strong pillar or symbol of India's economic reform program, which it has started off very well, but there are still challenges.
On the rationalization of tax slabs, Syed, what are your big expectations?
See, rationalization is going to take time. It's not something which we can expect to happen in one meeting. It's going to take a series of meetings to ensure that there is rationalization of the tax rates. There are certain conversations specifically from some sectors regarding multi-utility vehicles, where there is some rationalization expected on that front, as well as certain tax rates on food and beverages sold in cinemas. What should be the tax rates on those? So there are specific conversations and some requests from the sectors relating to that, but rationalization as such is going to take time to come through.
Okay, rationalization is going to take time. Last word to you, Srinath. I want to understand from you, an appellate tribunal is also what the industry has been seeking for a very long time, because taxpayers had to approach court, they had to approach various authorities to resolve dispute. There's been a sort of a delay in setting up of GST appellate tribunal. A lot of expectations there by the way of some movement as far as setting up an appellate tribunal.
So I think this will come through this year. Election year, some of the good optics to say good governance, clean governance, fundamentally will boost some of these optics. So I think we should see a tribunal getting at least announced, probably not in motion until the next financial year, but at least announced and kick-started to life.
All right. Announcement, of course, expected. 50th meeting of the GST Council is currently underway. Gentlemen, appreciate you both taking time out and joining us on that story.